Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webcast on keeping your career on track while working and parenting. My name's Anna Young, and I'm from the Chartered Banker Institute, and I'm delighted to introduce you to Karen Taylor, who is the founder of Parent Cloud. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the online function to submit these, and Karen will try her best to answer as many as possible. We also have a poll involved, so please do participate. I hope you enjoy the webcast, and I will hand you over to Karen now.
Thanks so much, Anna. So as Anna mentioned, my name is Karen Taylor. I'm the founder of Parent Cloud. So we're a platform that helps businesses to support their working parents by giving those parents access to online remote consultations with specialists, and it includes an area of our services which focus very much on career coaching for parents. And prior to setting up Parent Cloud, I spent lots of my time coaching individuals, particularly within the financial sector. And I'm also a mum of two, so I've got a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. So I'm currently very much in the thick of trying to work and parent and homeschool. So I definitely understand some of the challenges that I think we're all very much facing at the moment. So our webinar today is focused on how to keep your career on track while working and parenting. So I'm sure everyone on here will have your own very individual circumstances and your own aspirations. And while I can't offer you kind of individualized, tailored advice, what I'm going to do is spend some time introducing you to some exercises that I used a lot when I was one-to-one coaching. And it was really to help individuals to focus on what's important to them, get people thinking about actions to take and ways to make a difference. And I've tried to make these exercises focus both on your career, but also more broadly on your kind of life and your working life balance. So the first slide, and I don't want this to be a horribly depressing slide, but what I want it to do is just to give you kind of a backdrop of what parents and the challenges parents are facing, and just make you feel like you're not alone if you're finding it difficult to focus on your career. Which is naturally really hard when also you have a second full-time job raising your children, and as we all know, probably a third full-time job as a teacher. And I've spent the morning homeschooling my kids this morning, and it's been pretty challenging. But anyway, looking at some of these statistics, so issues with gender pay are not just there because of issues with how people are viewed in society. I think also, and that is totally a major factor, they're also there because suddenly as a parent, the time you had prior to having children to focus on your career is now massively reduced. And you have to focus on a huge number of other things in your life too. So it's why parents seem to be much more stressed than their childless peers. So if you look at that stat in the bottom right-hand corner, it's a bit of a depressing stat, but it's been found that parents are actually 40% more stressed than childless colleagues and peers. So it does mean that it can be really tricky to be able to parent and focus and progress in your career too. We also conducted a study here at Parent Cloud, and it was the impact on sleep deprivation of parents. So I'm sure we've all been there. I've been there too, going into work with hardly any sleep, trying to focus on work, and it can be really tricky. And this study actually found that parents of 0 to 6-year-old children averaged about an hour less sleep than others. And while an hour may not seem like much to some of you, actually when you went on to see the impact that had on people's lives, so on their mental health, productivity, motivation, confidence levels even, it was natural that can have an impact. So it's almost even more important for parents to be trying to kind of find some time to think about their career and how to make life work around all the other challenges that you're faced with. So when you're thinking about what you want to take away from this session and potential outcomes, I think firstly, there can be a stigma attached to working and parenting, and there can also be a stigma attached to parenting and not working. So it can often seem like there's no way of winning in this situation. But ideally, throughout this presentation and also ideally in life, to try and silence any thoughts of what others might be thinking about you. Also try and silence any self-limiting beliefs, so any kind of voice in your head that's telling you you can't do certain things, and just try and think that anything's possible right now and build a picture of what you'd really like to achieve in life. So what's important to you? And take a moment here, if you can, to try and think about what you might like to take away from the session. And as you can see from this slide, it doesn't necessarily need to be that you want to step up in your career. It could actually be a smaller change that may have a really positive impact on your life. I've put some examples here. Yours could be completely different. But I'm going to kind of pause for a moment just for you to just have a quick think about what you might like to achieve and take away from this session. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to a series of exercises. So most I've adapted from exercises I used a lot when I was doing one-to-one coaching with people. So I'm going to run you through how to approach each exercise, and I'm going to give you a brief moment to start to think about how you would approach it. All of these exercises are best applied when you can then talk through your thoughts with a good listener. So it could be a partner, it could be a friend, it could be a colleague. If you can't do that, then you can totally you get a lot out of them just by running through the exercises yourself. There'll be a really good starter for 10 for you. And what we're going to ideally get you to do is to start thinking about what's important in your life. What some of the things are that you'd really like to change, what you might like to achieve, and as Anna just said, please do pop any questions you have at all onto the webinar, and I'll be keeping an eye out, and I'll try and refer to them if they crop up. One thing I should say is that I do totally understand that carving out time to be able to do these exercises right now may be tricky, but even if you could spend just 15 minutes taking a look at them, I think it could be really useful and could really make a difference. So this first exercise, so your career or life timeline, is something that I used to use all the time, right at the beginning of conversations I had with people that I was coaching. And the idea of it is to give you a better understanding of what drives you and what doesn't. So what makes you happy and what doesn't. What are the things that aren't working now or haven't worked in the past? And you can look at it in a couple of ways. So when I gave you that moment to think about what you wanted to achieve, if it was very career orientated, then make this your career timeline. If it was more broad and thinking about your kind of work-life balance at the moment, then perhaps just reflect on the last couple of months. But anyway, it's a way to look at what's important to you in the future by reflecting on what has and hasn't worked in your past. So the center line is going to be your timeline. So set your time frame running from left to right, and then map out the changes. So the highs and lows that you've had in your career or life to date. Above the curve, as you'll see from the smiley face, are the things that you view really, really positively, and below the curve and the line are things that you don't. And the happier things made you, then the higher it should be. And so if you could take a moment right now and try and think about what you would view as your highest peak. So something that you view really, really positively. And then if I was coaching you, I'd get you to think about that point in time and think about what you were doing, and whether there were certain people involved, whether there were certain activities, and what does it tell you about what really satisfies you? If you're thinking about work, then perhaps were you in a team? Were you working by yourself? Did it have something to do with you having a really great manager? And maybe write some of these things down. And then if you were looking at your lowest peak, again, what was going on? Why did you feel that way? What led you to feeling so low about it? The other thing that can be really, really useful and always proved to be very useful when I was coaching people is that when you see the curve suddenly beginning to rise. So as you'll see from this, from the example I've given you here, so you'll see I've mapped out lots of different points in time that you could put there, and then you join them all up and you start to see things changing over the course of your career. So, if you look at maybe this a change in childcare arrangement, it's just a total example. But if you can see that like a sudden increase in your curve, ask yourself, why did that suddenly begin to change? What happened, and how did you make it happen? Is obviously an exercise you could spend much, much longer on, but the key is to start to identify any patterns. So anything that you really need in place to help you to thrive, and also a reminder that you made some of those great decisions in the past and you made them happen. So you are totally in charge of these things going on in your life. So now I'm going to move on to just look at a few things a little bit more generally. So again, I've adapted an exercise that I very much used as a career coach, but you can use it as analysing what satisfies you both in your work and in your life. And you start to write out things that have to be in place to help you to thrive. The idea is that it hopefully gives you a checklist to live from when you're making key life decisions. Clearly, these things can change over time, but it's a good place to start. And so what you can do is draw 2 columns. So one is life and one entitled work. So here you'll see I've got an office scene and I've got a house. Under each title, take some time and write out some essential satisfiers for you. It could be 4, it could be up to 8 on either side. I've put some examples here, but examples in work might be having a good manager, it might be earning well, it could be feeling like you're making a difference. It could be anything like that. And then in life, it could be things like stability or spending time with friends or anything like that. And then what you do is look at them really, really closely and start to think about the things that are the most important. And you can see from my 1, 2, 3 on here, I've started to do it. But if you could just grade them on a score of 1 to 10, 12, whatever it is that you've done, and you can start prioritizing things in your life. A great exercise to then do from here is to start thinking about how much time you spend on certain things. So you could draw perhaps a pie chart on the time you spend on various things and the things that you really enjoy, and the things that you maybe don't enjoy quite so much, and then reflect on the time you spend doing each of those things. So spot where you need and want to be spending a bit more time. Now, naturally, there may well be some blocks here. So money, for instance, can be a significant one. And so you may not be able to change certain things drastically on that pie chart. But if you can think about ways that you can structure your life just to increase your time on things that you really love, even slightly, that could be a great thing that could help. And if you could start to write out some like I will statements. So I will, start exercising more, or just starting to write things that you're going to do. That's a good thing to do. And hopefully over the course of these exercises, you'll start to build up a few I will statements. Now, this next exercise is something that all coaches try and do, and there's lots of variations of these exercises, but it's all about trying to find purpose in what you do. So the next 2 exercises, I'm not going to do them here, but there are things that you can ideally take away and spend a bit of time on. But there are studies that show that people with a real sense of meaning in what they do actually have 15% lower risk of death, regardless of age. And other studies show that purpose-driven employees are much more likely to be high performers and have higher levels of fulfillment in their work. And so being able to find that purpose could make a real difference. Now, there are a couple of ways that you can approach this finding purpose exercise. The first is a written exercise. The second is way more visual. So it depends on how creative you are as a person and how you learn and how you absorb things. But just choose whichever one you feel works best for you. The first one was designed by Dr. Laura King, It's called the Best Possible Future Self exercise, and it's really been shown to improve overall happiness levels. It reduces any kind of goal conflict you have, and there are lots of other benefits too. So firstly, and ideally without any self-editing, so I talked earlier about this voice telling you that you can't do things, so self-limiting beliefs, ideally try and silence that a little bit and write a response to this question. So think about your life in the future as a much, much older self. Imagine that everything has gone as well as it possibly could, that you've worked as hard and succeeded at accomplishing all of your life goals. And then think of this as the realization of all your life streams, and then write about what you imagined. Another coaching thing that people do is get people to write their own obituary. It's a bit more depressing. But anyway, it's a way of writing what you really wanted to achieve. Another thing to do, and this is the more visual way of doing this exercise, is draw a picture of your life as you'd like it to be. So think about everything, your job, your home, your family, and then ideally, again, I've said it a few times, choose someone that you trust to try and describe it to them and describe why certain things are really important to you. And then ideally, once you've got that in front of you, either the big picture where you've drawn your life as you'd like it to be, or your statement of what you wanted to achieve, then think about where you are now and start to write those I will and I want statements. It could only be just three statements. But if you sit down and create them and then you read them back to yourself, you need to think about the ones that get you really, really excited. And then ideally start to build up a series of actions that you may well want to take from those statements. So we've really, really quickly run through a few things. So we've looked at the things that positively and negatively affect you, both at work and in life. We've looked at the things that satisfy you most in your life and work. We've given you an exercise to map out whether you're spending the time you want to spend on each thing. And then we've started to picture your best possible future self. So your world as you'd like it to be. And so then the next thing to do is to work out some actions that I've talked about that would ideally positively impact your life right now and begin to try and make some of those things happen. So this is, we call it an action wheel. It is something that I used to sit with clients for a long, long time, working out how to do it. And what I did is I got a big A3 piece of paper. So if you've got it, that could be a great way to start. And you draw a really large circle filling the whole page. And you look at it like it's a clock face. And you decide how long you'd like to give yourself to make the changes you'd like to make in your life and in your work. And you write that length of time at the 12 o'clock point on your circle. So here in this example, I've put a year, but it could be anything. It could be 3 months. It could be less than that. It could be 3 years if it's a really big, chunky goal that you've decided you want to achieve. And then you break down that clock face in terms of weeks or months. So in this example, it would probably be 3, 6, and 9 months is the way you would break that circle down. And then you start to think about some action statements. You really should start them all with I will. And it could be anything. It could be I will speak to my manager about options for progression, or I'll speak with my manager about flexible working options, or speak with my partner about alternating nursery drop-off, or anything like that. And then when you give yourself a time frame to achieve that goal, then you pop it on your circle relating to the time you want to achieve it. I used to do it with lots of post-it notes, just to make it quite a kind of visual and interactive exercise, and you can totally do this at home. So once you've completed some of the exercises, then start to piece together this action wheel for yourself, for things to do. It's something naturally to complete in your own time when you can possibly come up with just 5 minutes of it, with everything that's going on at the moment. One thing I would say is that the I will is really important. It's meaning that it kind of ingrains it in you that you will do it. And try and think of kind of small incremental gains. So you are far, far more likely to achieve things, especially as the busy parents that I know you are, if you set yourself smaller bite-sized goals and make sure that the things you write down are tangible and measurable. I know people always talk about kind of SMART objectives. So an example that I often use, so some people often say I want to build a stronger network. If you were putting I want to build a stronger network on that circle, it's not a very tangible action. Whereas if you said, I will, and no, this is a bad example right now because no one's going to be attending networking events, but I will attend X number of networking events in the next X amount of time and speak with at least however many individuals. It's just there as an example, but it's to make it very specific for you, and to make sure that you can keep things on track, and that you know exactly what you're going to be doing from this. So, if we were looking at actions just a little bit more generally, so I know I've raced through some of these things, but if I were you, I'd just think about some of these exercises that I've outlined and just pick one or two that really started to resonate, that you think you might really take something away from, and spend a little bit more time on them. And then ideally, I've said it lots, sit down with someone to chat through it. It's what a coach would be doing with you. And we have lots available on the platform. I've got a great discount code, so please drop me an email if you want to engage with them. If you can chat with a friend, get them to kind of gently question you about some of the things you're talking about, that would really help. So we know that small incremental gains are more sustainable to make sure. So make sure to keep that in mind and set yourself really realistic timeframes within the constraints of what's going on in your current lifestyle at the moment, which I know is a lot. And while for many parents, lockdown is proving to be incredibly difficult, and we're seeing this, to give you an idea, so on our platform, we are seeing 3 times as many people accessing our therapy sessions, and we're actually seeing far less people accessing career coaching sessions at the moment. It is really demonstrating that people just aren't finding the time to focus on their career, and it used to be in our top 2 services that people were accessing. So if you can find a bit of time to do this, and start thinking about what you want to achieve in the future, then you will be ahead of the curve and in a really good position to try and hit the ground running when things gradually do get back to normal, and I totally hope that they will. The other thing to do, so whenever you're coming up with any of these actions, the key is to make yourself accountable for them. So we know that by just writing something down, you give yourself a better chance of actually achieving them, but going further and voicing them to somebody else, maybe a manager, for instance, who may well also hold you accountable for them, you're much more likely to achieve them, or setting yourself reminders. That's a good thing to do. One other thing, and I'll put it here in the slide around your network. So we're running another session like this next week around resilience. And one thing that we really found there is that strengthening your support network, both at work and at home, is something that has a real impact on resilience, which naturally directly impacts any career progression. And those with a strong support network were significantly more resilient. So think about the existing people in your life who are radiators for you, so where you feel really energized after spending time with them, and ideally, and this may well be remote time, but ideally spend more time with them, and start to build up that network and that support network for you. So gaining internal sponsorship within work can certainly make a difference when it comes to career development, and voicing any sorts of your aspirations with others means it's much, much more likely to happen. There was a free tool that I came across a few years back actually that I often guide people to when it comes to building their network, and it might be something that would be useful for you. So it's personalboardroom.com. They don't pay me for this kind of plug, but I think it's a really great thing to use. So what it does, it encourages individuals to analyse your current network. And you pick key people within your network, and actually you give them almost job titles. They don't need to know that you've given them this job title, but it's a way of making sure you're utilising your network really well, and then actually it then goes on to prompt you in ways of making the most out of your network. So it's something to perhaps take a look at. Anyway, I feel like I've rushed through all that, but I hope you found it helpful. And even if you're starting to think about one thing that you can take away and change, or you can sit down and do some of those exercises and get one thing from it to put you on track and keep your career on track with all the challenges that were going on, then I really, really hope that it has been helpful. So please do reach out if you've got any questions at all. And I don't know if you've spotted any. Are you still there, Anna?
Apologies, just forgot to unmute myself. Yeah, I've got a couple. Do you have any tips on how to work and homeschool at the moment? Someone's finding it difficult to get anything done and finding the whole situation quite stressful.
Yeah, well, I think that person is totally not alone. I could have asked that question myself. I think homeschooling and working at the moment is something that is so incredibly hard, and I'm actually been advising some businesses really on how to be trying to support their working parents, it's tough. I think trying to I've chatted with some of our child behaviour specialists about this too, and so they are really guiding parents to just make sure that they're putting lots of structure in place, making sure that there are timetables. I think for single parents it is even more challenging, but if you're part of a working couple, then really trying to break it down so that you both get some kind of proper working time within the day. I came across actually a fantastic business the other day called My Pocket Skill. They have lots of older students who, for not very, I think it's £5.45, those individuals can help to school your children on specific activities, and something like that could well be invaluable for people with older children who are studying. So that could be something to look at. I think definitely being very open and honest with your manager when it comes to the challenges that you're faced with, and ideally I really hope those businesses are being flexible, and but it can be very hard for businesses at the moment. So there's no kind of golden bullet, if that's the right term. I think we just need to think that there will be light at the end of the tunnel, and access any mental health support that your businesses may well have in their benefits packages. I think giving yourself some me time is very important too.
Thank you. And someone else has a question on child behaviour. They said that their children's really struggling with the current situation and their behaviour has changed. Do you have any tips to support them through that?
So again, I'd never be able to profess myself to be a child behaviour expert, but luckily we've got lots on our platform that I've engaged with a lot, and there was lots of things that they advised. I mentioned it already, so structure and trying to keep as much structure in place was a good one. I think they also said to try and be quite open and honest yourself with how you're feeling about the situation, so that kids don't get too anxious thinking that something's going on that they don't know what it is or how bad it is. And let them know that everyone's feeling that the situation's frustrating, and just try to give them as much as many cuddles and support as possible. I think homeschooling can really put a lot of pressure on, and I think children's mental health is much more important actually. So maybe try not to, if things aren't working that day with homeschooling, then maybe park some of it and approach it again on a different day, and just try and keep together as a family as much as you can.
Mm-hmm. There's just one more. You mentioned previously that you expect, or you'd hope that organisations are really supporting in this kind of situation when people have to homeschool? If an employer is not being supportive and doesn't acknowledge some of the issues that their employees are facing, do you have any suggestions on how they can broach the subject with them or overcome these challenges?
I think it is very difficult because lots of businesses are seeming to approach this situation in very, very different ways. As much as I'm advising businesses on different things, I think there are some that have taken a tack where it's all about productivity, and they're still they're maybe not being as flexible as they can with parents. I think being as honest and open as you can with your manager if you are feeling very much under pressure. I think businesses are becoming more and more aware of how important engagement is within their teams. So ideally, you'd hope that would then encourage people to try and take the pressure off. If it doesn't, then it may well be a case of trying to engage with other parents within your company and see whether as a group you can try and feed back or come up with ways that you can flex the way businesses have approached things for parents. Or it could be that they're just not aware of it. And they, try and make them aware of some of the stuff you're facing. It's a hard one though. If a business is struggling and really having to put the pressure on to stay afloat, then it will be very hard to get them to promote things. And so then it would be a case of just trying to look after yourself as much as you can. You do what you can, and know you're only human. But yeah, I think everyone's finding it incredibly challenging naturally at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's all the questions I've had in. Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you to everyone who's been listening. There'll be an on-demand version if you've joined us late, and I'll upload it to www.charteredbanker.com as well in our webcast section. And thank you very much.
Well, and actually, one thing I was going to say is that, and I forgot to, is that I do have a few other exercises, actually, kind of questionnaires that would help you really evaluate your values. And there's another one actually that will help you evaluate your skills. And so I've put my email here, or you can please do I think Anna said she's got copies as well. Or if you've got any questions about anything, I'd love to help. So please do reach out, and I'm here if I can help with anything.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks for hosting, Anna.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.